Would you like to apologize for what you've done to these good people?
And this is why we invest.
In early 2024, Meta chief executive Mark Zuckerberg was apologising to bereaved parents.
No one has to go through the types of things that your families have had to suffer.
Who blame him for the deaths of their children. The foundations for this scene were laid 3 years ago in the same building.
In the end, the buck stops with Mark. There is no one currently holding Mark accountable but himself.
When a former product manager at Facebook named Frances Haugen appeared before Congress.
I'm here today because I believe Facebook's products harm children, stoke division, and weaken our democracy. The company's leadership knows how to make Facebook and Instagram safer, but won't make the necessary changes because they have put their astronomical profits before people.
Frances released tens of thousands of internal documents in 2021.
The Facebook documents that were leaked.
Hundreds of leaked documents detail the inner workings of the world's largest social media company.
Exposing how much the company knew about the risks both Facebook and Instagram posed to its users and triggering a wave of regulatory reform around the world.
Ange Norman.
The EU's rules, which came into effect this year, are the toughest to date.
We need to make sure that we can regulate and take back control, because today the big tech giants are deciding the rules for the online world.
But in Australia, tech regulation is still a work in progress. Key legislation passed in 2021, the Online Safety Act, is being reviewed earlier than expected.
The government moved the review up because it is more urgent. There are so many things that need to be done to strengthen the Act, frankly.
On top of that, Australia is contemplating an update to the Privacy Act, AI regulations, rules against doxing, an industry code on scams, and a bill to rein in misinformation and disinformation.
This moment is so important for Australia because it's kind of coming in the wake of a lot of new information that has come out over the course of the last few years. When we look at the timing of the Online Safety Act, that law was drafted in a context where we might have had rumors that something might be wrong with social media, but we didn't have the evidence. And we can now see the urgency of having to act.
Government data shows a decline in the mental health of Australians over the last 2 decades. And it's worse for young people. Frances says our current laws leave children exposed in a range of ways.
A child that stays up till 2 a.m. because they literally can't put their phone down is a child that doesn't do as well in school the next day. They have a higher risk of dying of accidents. They're more likely to use drugs. Those are all hidden costs of systems optimized for profit over public well-being.
The trend begins around the same time social media and smartphones were released. And although the jury is still out as to whether tech is to blame, there's little doubt left in the tone of the political debate.
The data that we're seeing in relation to the mental health of Australian kids is really disturbing.
These huge social media giants are using our children in the worst possible ways.
We've got to do something here.
Unless we get a handle on this, we're going to see higher rates of violence, higher rates of mental ill health, and worse societal outcomes in the future.
In May, amid rising public anxiety, a more dramatic proposal.
Our kids are being harmed now, and there's no time to waste.
The South Australian Premier suggested banning social media for children under 14.
If you are a social media giant and you are making money off the back of making our children unwell, then we will not stop to see change.
Then a month later, the idea went national.
Peter Dutton is pledging a ban on Australian children under the age of 16 being able to log on.
It's inconceivable that you would just allow your 13-year-old to go down to a local park and just start mingling with any random person who comes by.
A ban, if it can be effective, is a good way to go.
The challenge with, let's call it a bumper sticker solution, something that can fit on just a few words, is that they usually aren't very robust. I think in the case of bans, you're almost saying the problem with these platforms is the children, not the platforms themselves. When we focus on, we're just gonna remove the under 16-year-olds and the problem will go away, it takes a lot of the urgency out of having conversations about building healthy systems overall.
What's a better conversation to have? What is the fight that we as a nation should be having?
For years, Australia was kind of a light in the darkness. Like if you look back to the 2010s, the only country that was really taking seriously the idea that people had rights online. But a lot of the core concepts behind how Australia's approached online safety, you take down the content, you censor things, it's a little dated. It's time to move forward and pass a modern online safety law.
A spokesperson for the Communications Minister, Michelle Rowland, said the Commonwealth will continue engaging with experts, academics, parents and young people as part of its review of the law. Frances Haugen is one of them. She's meeting with officials in Canberra this week.
The modern way of writing online safety laws that we've seen in the European Union instead say, hey, platforms, you know your business better than we do. Tell us what risks you know about and identify a plan on how you're going to reduce those risks.
To pull that off, Australian regulators would need new powers to insist on both greater transparency and safer design.
We have used our transparency powers to ask questions of a number of companies, including TikTok. I don't think we probably got the fulsome information that we need. I think we are going to need a different set of tools.
Frances says it could be simple, making social media safer.
As that bedtime approaches, you slow down Instagram a little bit and a little bit and a little bit. It's almost like you're pushing a little bit harder to make the feed go. As you approach your bedtime, you get tired and go to sleep. We've known for 20 years that if you make an application milliseconds slower, people use it less.
Changing the rules can be a painfully slow process, and Frances Haugen doesn't want bumper sticker solutions. But she is watching the clock.
When we perceive the costs of these platforms, we look at a 21-year-old who's struggling to make friends in college because they've lived online so much, or an 18-year-old. That kid only went online when they were 13 or 14. When I talk to 13 and 14-year-olds today, they've been on social media since they were 8 or 9. We need to not miss out on an opportunity to actually build social media systems that can help our societies to thrive. Unquestionably, this is probably like a once-in-a-decade opportunity.